Welcome to the Deconstructionist Deep Dive.
The podcast that doesn't just accept the story.
We break it
We examine the pieces.
and expose the machinery inside.
Let's dive in.
What if everything you've been told about high-value relationships isn't just wrong, but is actually designed to keep you trapped? You know, in a cage of constant self-auditing.
Right, like you're always checking your own stock price.
Exactly. So today we are taking the scalpel to this ideology. It really dominates modern relationship talk, doesn't it? The whole high-value person concept.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. And we're deconstructing the entire premise, not just like the surface dating advice.
No, it goes deeper.
Much deeper. We're looking at the machinery underneath it all, the part that tries to, well, commodify intimacy.
Turn connection into a transaction, like you said, a stock market ticker.
Precisely.
And what we found in the source material, well, it's pretty striking. It's a fully developed, really intentional framework.
It's not just random tips then.
Not at all. This isn't just a scattershot collection of, dating hacks. It's more like a formalized ideological blueprint. It's systematic.
Okay. How so?
Well, it systematically reduces human worth down to these specific, measurable market metrics, things you can easily point to and quantify.
And ignores everything else.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It models relationships as these cold, almost zero-sum transactions. And it uses this sophisticated, sometimes quite aggressive rhetoric to enforce its worldview.
Right. So our mission today, what we're trying to do here is expose those systemic deceptions.
Exactly. Show you, the listener, exactly where the logic falls apart.
And hopefully provide a clear path to, I guess, liberation, freedom from this kind of corrosive transactional thinking.
That's the goal, to see the system for what it is.
Okay, so let's unpack this blueprint then, because the first big move this ideology makes, you said, is radical reductionism.
That's right. It's essentially the colonization of human value by market logic. That's the core idea.
Colonization of value, wow.
Yeah. They start by attempting this total amputation of human worth, defining it only through externally verifiable, often pretty shallow metrics.
Okay, so forcing this gendered value quantification onto people.
Precisely. And it's an immediate, sweeping dismissal of all those vast, unquantifiable dimensions of being human.
Like what gets ignored?
Oh, everything important, really. Compassion, emotional intelligence, integrity, even just shared laughter,
The stuff that actually makes relationships work.
Exactly. If you can't slap a dollar figure or some kind of numerical rating on it, this ideology basically declares it worthless.
So your entire internal life, your character, irrelevant.
Irrelevant because it's non-marketable, according to them. It doesn't fit the spreadsheet.
Okay. Let's look at the specifics then, the benchmarks they set. You said they're gendered and specific.
Ruthlessly specific. For male value, the metric is overwhelmingly economic. It's all about resources.
Money.
Money, stability, wealth.
Yeah.
And this isn't vague advice like be successful. The sources mandate specificity.
How specific?
Well, the hard definition of a high-value man within this framework, it's tied exclusively to verifiable financial performance.
Okay.
We're talking about achieving, and this is crucial, maintaining a six-figure income.
Right, I saw that. A six-figure income.
Sustained for at least 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years.
Yeah. And that 3 to 5 year stipulation, that's where you really see the mechanism, the insight.
What do you mean?
It's not enough to just hit the number once, maybe on a lucky year. The ideology demands audited stability. Proof.
So it forces a certain mindset.
Absolutely. It transforms the individual's mental state into one of, frankly, constant financial paranoia. Your personal worth is perpetually tied to verifiable numbers in a bank account.
So you can never relax.
Never. You have to constantly defend the stability of your economic identity because failure, even a dip, means immediate demotion from high-value status. Your stock just crashed.
That sounds exhausting. And
Yeah.
I'm quite fragile, actually.
It is. And it stands in really stark contrast to the benchmarks they set for female value,
Which are...
defined almost entirely through aesthetics. So while the man's value is the spreadsheet, the woman's value is overwhelmingly tied to physical appearance, youth, and, they call it sexual market appeal, SMA.
SMA. Okay, and this is quantified, too.
It is, but it's through a much slipperier, more subjective rating scale. Still, it's equally rigid in its demands.
How do they rate it?
Well, the language they use is explicitly market-based. You get assigned these ratings like average at best, or sometimes an adjustable 6.
An adjustable 6? Seriously?
As you say, is dehumanizing. The
Yeah.
focus is entirely on external presentation and essentially shelf life.
Shelf life. You mean age.
Yeah. Perceived fertility, the age curve, physical fitness, style,
Yeah.
all the externals.
So the cruel reality of this system, it forces women to treat their bodies like
Rapidly depreciating assets in this market.
Yeah.
Where the primary currency of their worth is explicitly youth-dependent.
Which means a desperate competition against time, not growth.
Exactly. It's fundamentally about perceived decline, not development.
Okay, so that quantification. Men as capital, women as commodity appeal. That sets the stage for their whole operating principle.
It does, because they claim this whole system is founded on the concept of hypergamy.
Right. Hypergamy, the idea that women tend to marry up socially or economically.
Yes, but they frame it very specifically. Not as, a flexible social or economic behavior you might see in some cultures under certain conditions.
No.
No. They frame it as an immutable, universal biological law.
Ah, okay, that's a big move.
It's the pivotal, critical ideological maneuver. By labeling hypergamy a biological imperative, they try to strip away any room for social, cultural, or economic critique.
Because if it's biology,
Then it's natural, it's unavoidable, and therefore you can't criticize it. That's the argument. They argue that women universally and instinctively seek to, and this is their phrase, consolidate on the highest value man available.
consolidate, like
No.
merging assets.
Precisely. And this logic leads directly to their core organizational structure, the relationship marketplace.
The marketplace model.
Yeah. In this model, intimacy isn't about connection. It's explicitly modeled as an efficient cold market. You're not a human seeking warmth.
You're a rational actor.
Exactly. A rational actor maximizing your utility in every single interaction.
That's chilling, applying neoclassical economics directly to the human heart.
It's a perfect case study. Principles of maximizing efficiency, quantifying value, applied straight to love and connection.
So if you internalize that belief that everyone's just a commodity,
Then the marketplace model becomes the only logical, non-emotional way to approach dating or marriage. It turns romance into, essentially, financial calculation.
okay, so this initial quantification, reducing people to metrics, it directly sets up the next part, right? The operational mechanism, transactionalism.
That's it. It takes relationships, which, arguably should be about mutual growth, shared vulnerability, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it converts them into a coldly calculated exchange of goods and services.
And this is most obvious when they talk about marriage.
Absolutely. When they discuss long-term commitment, concepts like, unconditional love or real emotional partnership are just stripped away, gone.
So marriage becomes a
An
contract.
explicit or implicit contract.
Yeah.
And we really need to detail the specific goods being exchanged in this supposed contract.
Because they're clearly defined.
And gendered.
Very clearly defined and gendered. And this is what establishes the power dynamic they focus on.
Okay, so what's on the male side of the contract? What's he bringing?
According to the source materials, it's exclusively provision and protection.
So the money and security thing again?
Exactly. The audited stability we talked about, the resources, and a guarantee of physical safety and economic comfort. That's his contribution.
Okay. And on the female side, what's her part of the bargain?
Beauty and companionship.
Wow. That's incredibly traditional.
It's a classic traditionalist framing, yeah, but it's filtered entirely through the cynicism of modern economic theory. She's positioned as the aesthetically pleasing, maybe emotionally supportive asset that complements his capital. Not a partnership based on shared goals for the future.
No. It's framed as a strategic alliance built on leverage.
Which brings us to how they define resource control.
Right. Because that structure necessitates a way to think about power. The ideology argues that men and women hold these distinct strategic resources.
And these resources inherently create leverage.
That's the claim. Turning partnership into, basically, leverage politics, a negotiation.
Okay, what are these distinct resources?
The sources are completely unambiguous here. The female strategic resource is control over sexual access.
Right, that's her primary commodity in their market.
That's how they frame it. And the male strategic resource, control over commitment and relationship status.
So he decides if it gets serious, if the transaction moves from short-term dating to long-term investment, like marriage.
He holds the keys to commitment, essentially, yes.
And if we analyze that dynamic, what does it actually do to a relationship?
Well, it instantly reduces partnership to a zero-sum game. It's not collaborative anymore.
Because you're constantly monitoring your partner.
Constantly. Trying to assess if their asset value is stable, right? And figuring out if you can gain greater leverage by withholding or offering your own strategic resource.
Wow. So the moment you start quantifying resources and turning them into leverage,
You completely ignore the collaborative nature of healthy relationships. You're forced, really, to constantly look for weaknesses in your partner's position.
and protect your own resources.
Zealously, it mandates suspicion, not trust. It's inherently adversarial.
Okay. And to justify this kind of unequal, suspicious exchange, which must create friction, right? Resentment.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where they rely heavily on this really sophisticated rhetorical tool, the balance misdirection.
The balance misdirection. What's that?
They present society right now as being fundamentally out of balance.
Ah, okay. I've heard this kind of argument before.
It's a genius rhetorical move, really,
Mm.
because it provides a target for all the existing pain and frustration that their audience might be feeling.
And what's the specific claim? What's out of balance?
The claim is that modern society, and they often cite things like feminist norms or dating app dynamics, maybe shifts in gender roles, has allegedly overvalued women and drastically devalued men.
Devalued men. Who specifically?
Specifically, their appeal targets the average man, maybe the blue-collar guy, the middle-class man, the one who doesn't quite meet that intense six-figure income requirement, maybe.
Or maybe he does, but still feels overlooked.
Exactly. He perceives himself as ignored or disposable in the dating scene. He's presented as the primary victim of this societal imbalance.
Okay, I can see the power in that narrative. It directs the resentment.
Perfectly. Instead of looking at, say, structural economic issues like wage stagnation, maybe the pressure on men to shoulder all financial burdens, the anger is expertly funneled towards women and feminist norms.
So it turns the disenfranchised man into a kind of martyr.
A martyr whose legitimate power, they claim, has been stolen by these cultural shifts. And that perfectly prepares the audience for the next stage, the specific tribal architecture they build.
Right, so once they've laid down these core ideas, the axioms, and they've directed that resentment, then they build defenses.
Exactly. The ideology constructs this really elaborate rhetorical defense system. Its whole purpose is to insulate itself from any external critique.
Okay, let's look at the persuasion tactics first. You mentioned they confuse tone with truth.
Yes, absolutely. The ideology often markets its delivery, which can be aggressive, blunt, highly provocative, as a necessary form of truth-telling.
Like, this is the hard truth no one else will tell you.
Precisely. It's branded as this tough, masculine corrective to a culture they claim is too coddling or sensitive.
But that's a logical fallacy, isn't it?
It's textbook argumentum ad baculum, the appeal to force or intimidation. They intentionally conflate the harshness, the brutality of the tone with the validity of the content.
So the implication is, because this hurts to hear, it must be true.
That's the trick, because it's so uncomfortable, so shocking, it must be the painful truth. But the emotional impact isn't proof of accuracy.
It's a feature of the entertainment product.
It's a designed feature of the entertainment, exactly. Real truth, actual valid points, they can be delivered with precision, empathy, intellectual rigor. But that nuanced approach
Doesn't generate clicks. Doesn't sell courses.
doesn't generate the same kind of engagement, no. And it doesn't build the same kind of fervent ideological adherence that shock does. Harshness creates loyalty through intensity, not accuracy.
Okay. And this harshness is coupled with anti-intellectualism.
A deep strain of anti-intellectual posturing, yes. Any formal knowledge, any academic discipline, sociology, clinical psychology, established relationship research, it's just dismissed outright.
As what?
As elite nonsense, or ivory tower theories that don't work in the real world.
Ah, the populist appeal.
Exactly. Rejecting elite or university expertise in favor of, quote, street or outcome-based understanding. The message is simple. The academics are lying to you. Only we who get results understand how things really work.
Which conveniently inoculates their audience against any criticism that relies on, actual data or expertise.
Keeps the discussion confined only to their manufactured system.
Yeah. And when they need to justify these often harsh, maybe ethically dubious methods.
Anecdotal justification, that's the go-to. They highlight a select few positive testimonials. You saved my marriage. I finally got the girl of my dreams, whatever.
Using an ends justify the means logic.
Totally. It completely ignores any systemic harm or individual emotional damage caused by adopting this purely transactional mindset.
So the focus is relentlessly on the immediate claimed outcome.
Yes, which allows them to completely bypass any ethical, moral, or psychological discussion about the means used to achieve it. If you hit your goal, the ideology is validated. End of story.
Regardless of the cost to yourself or your partner?
The emotional costs are irrelevant in that framework.
But the architecture isn't just persuasion, right? It uses preemptive defenses.
Right. It actively inoculates its followers against potential external criticism before it even arrives.
How does that work?
Well, first there's strategic tribalism, perfected for the digital age. They champion the average man as this undervalued, misunderstood martyr. That fosters a really strong in-group identity, defined by a shared sense of victimization.
Creating an us versus them mentality.
Absolutely. And then this group identity is shielded by a tactic we could call ad hominem inoculation.
Ad hominem inoculation. Explain that.
It's the rhetorical move where any criticism, no matter how intellectually sound or fact-based it might be, is pre-framed as illegitimate.
How so?
It's dismissed in advance as silencing or hatred, jealousy, maybe an attack by the establishment, or bitter feminists.
So they discredit the critic before the argument is even heard?
Exactly. They dismiss the intellectual opponents, academics, journalists, whoever disagrees as illegitimate from the start. So their followers never actually have to engage substantively with the critique.
I mean, they already know the critic is operating in bad faith.
Right. It creates this perfect, closed, ideological system, a self-sealing loop.
And what about criticism from outside their target audience?
Oh, that's easily dismissed too. If you, the listener, don't belong to the primary demographic, say, men feeling disenfranchised, then your critique is just invalid because, quote, the content was not created for you.
Wow. So they define their own rules of engagement and reject all external referees.
Precisely. It ensures the content is never held accountable to universal standards of logic, ethics, or even basic human decency.
Okay, so we've deconstructed the blue pill, the mechanisms, the rhetoric. Now let's apply the scalpel. Where does the core logic actually break down? Despite all the defenses, there must be vulnerabilities.
Oh, absolutely. Critical vulnerabilities. Let's start with the most fundamental weakness. The flaw in value quantification itself.
The idea of reducing worth to a number.
Exactly. That radical reductionism, defining human worth by a salary or an aesthetic rating, it's profoundly self-defeating and inherently unstable.
So how do we counter that? What's the alternative perspective?
Well, this is where we can bring in philosophical counterpoints that stretch back millennia, traditions that actively reject this entire paradigm.
Right.
We can look immediately at, say, Stoicism and Buddhism.
Okay. How do they counter it?
Both of these ancient philosophies center values squarely on the internal life. Virtue, character, inner peace. They teach that tethering your self-worth to external ephemeral markers, which is exactly what the high-value framework demands, is just folly. It's a mistake.
Because those external things are temporary.
Exactly. Wealth can be lost in a market crash, right? Physical appearance inevitably fades with time. If you build your entire identity on that quicksand, you're setting yourself up for suffering.
So the philosophical alternative is?
It insists that true value is durable precisely because it resides entirely within your moral choices, your mindset, your character. It doesn't fluctuate based on market movements or the judgment of some arbitrary rating scale.
That makes sense. What about a more communal rejection?
For that, we can look at the Ubuntu philosophy, primarily from Southern Africa. The core idea is often translated as I am because we are.
I am because we are. How does that challenge the market logic?
It's a powerful counterpoint because it fundamentally rejects the competitive individualism that fuels the relationship market model. Ubuntu argues that value isn't individualistic, it's inherently communal and relational.
So my worth isn't about me alone.
No. Your worth is defined by your contribution to the community, your capacity for empathy, the quality of your relationships, not by how much wealth you hoard or how appealing you are in isolation.
That completely dismantles the competitive zero-sum game the high-value system relies on.
Annihilates it, yeah.
Okay, next vulnerability. What about their claim of universal hypergamy, the biological imperative thing?
Right. The ideology insists this is a biological fact set in stone, but that's a massive oversimplification. It crosses the line into biological determinism, often used, frankly, for social control.
So it's not universal.
Anthropology demonstrates pretty clearly that the claim of universality just doesn't hold up under cross-cultural scrutiny.
What kind of evidence contradicts it?
Well, if you look at the sheer variation in human history, think about systems of polyandry, where women have multiple husbands, or complex kinship arrangements that aren't based on simple pairing, or specific matriarchal societies.
They all show different ways of forming bonds and families.
Exactly. diverse mating and commitment systems that directly contradict the idea of a single, universal, competitive drive for the highest value partner based on these narrow metrics.
Even things today, like asexuality or different relationship orientations.
Or even just the increasing cultural value many people place on shared intellectual compatibility or emotional connection over purely economic metrics. All of this defies the simplistic universality claim.
So the whole universal hypergamy narrative isn't really science.
It's not a neutral scientific observation. It's a tool. It's used to naturalize a specific, highly competitive, and frankly Western patriarchal social order. They're essentially trying to pass off a very specific cultural norm as a cosmic law.
Okay, and that leads us to the flaw in the transactional marriage model itself.
Yes, the ethical and practical poverty of it. If long-term commitment is nothing more than a calculated exchange of assets, what happens?
What happens when the assets devalue?
Exactly. What happens when the man loses his wealth during a recession? Or the woman inevitably loses the peak of her youth over time?
The contract collapses.
The contract, based solely on those fluctuating assets, instantly becomes unstable. It leaves both parties vulnerable to profound relational instability precisely when they might need support the most.
So what's the counter perspective here, beyond just don't be transactional?
Well, it's rooted in ideas of shared growth and meaning. Think about traditions like Romanticism or existentialism.
How do they view love?
They define love not as a calculated exchange, but as a profound, meaning-generating union. It's two free, self-determining individuals choosing to build something together.
So love is seen as like a shared project.
Co-creation of meaning in what might otherwise feel like a meaningless world. It's not a merger of assets designed to maximize utility. It's about building shared value.
And if we bring in a more structural critique,
then Marxist feminism offers a really sharp lens. It identifies this transactional, asset-focused view, not as some natural state of human connection.
no, it as
A direct, traceable symptom of capitalist commodification spreading into new areas. It's the ideological infection of the relationship domain by neoliberal economic theory.
turning the search for love into hunting for the best ROI.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
The pursuit of the best possible return on investment in the relationship market.
Okay, one more major flaw. Justified dominance. You mentioned historical revisionism.
Yes. The entire structure relies on erasing the origins of power to justify current inequalities.
How does that work? What's the circular logic?
Okay, look. Historical power structures, patriarchy, control of capital, gendered laws about inheritance, work, property. These were initially established by men to systematically favor men. That's just a historical fact in many societies.
Right.
Then the successful outcomes of that rigged system, the fact that men, on average, traditionally accumulated more wealth and status than women.
That outcome is then used as proof.
Exactly. The high-value ideology points to that outcome, the wealth disparity, and claims, see, this is proof of natural male value. Men are just inherently more valuable in the market.
Without ever acknowledging that the rules of the game were set up to produce that exact result.
Precisely. They ignore the rigged game and celebrate the score. Once you expose that logical circularity that the system uses its own outcomes to validate its premises, the entire rationale for maintaining that existing unequal power dynamic it disintegrates.
This is fascinating. So what's really crucial here, what listeners need to grasp, is that these specific tactics, the quantification, the balance argument, they aren't new.
Not at all. That's the key insight. These rhetorical strategies, the ways the high-value ideology defends itself and promotes itself, they are historically tested power plays. They're just repackaged.
Repackaged in modern digital jargon.
Exactly. By identifying these historical patterns, these typologies of deception, we can reveal that this whole system isn't some novel insight into modern dating. It's just the latest version of age-old social control mechanisms.
Okay, let's break them down. Deception number one, the quantification lie. What's the historical parallel?
The source of power here is capital and patriarchy, insisting worth is fixed and assigned. The clearest cross-cultural proof. Look at the Indian caste system.
The caste system, how does that connect?
For centuries, that system assigned value, status, and destiny at birth. It was based on a claimed natural, spiritual, or hierarchical order. Arbitrary, yet presented as absolutely fixed and inherent.
Just like assigning market value based on gender and external markers now.
It perfectly mirrors the current ideology's move to assign inherent, unchangeable market value based on gender, wealth, or looks. The goal is identical: legitimize massive inequality by making it seem like naturally ordained, fixed hierarchy not a constructed system of control.
Okay, that's powerful. What's deception number 2?
The balance misdirection. This is a classic tool of reactionary politics. The claim that changing the existing power structure will inevitably lead to chaos and societal collapse.
Right, the don't rock the boat argument. Where do we see that historically?
Tragically, you see it crystal clear with the arguments of antebellum slaveholders in the United States.
How so?
Their primary argument against abolition, against ending slavery, wasn't just economic. They claimed it would fundamentally upset the essential economic and social balance of society.
They argued it would lead to chaos.
Moral chaos, instability, the breakdown of order. It is the identical tactic used today. Defending a demonstrably unjust or exploitative status quo like the transactional relationship structure by claiming the existing arrangement is necessary for stability.
So the message is, if you feel oppressed, it's not the structure's fault.
It's the fault of the imbalance caused by outside agitators trying to change things. Don't blame the system, blame those disrupting the natural order.
Okay. Deception number 3.
The market as moral arbiter. The source of power here is really neoliberal ideology itself, where economic efficiency replaces older forms of moral justification.
The market becomes God, essentially.
That's a great way to put it. Historically, think about the divine right of kings. Monarchs claimed they were God's chosen representatives on earth.
Making their rule inherently moral and legitimate. Unchallengeable.
Exactly. In the high-value ideology, the market, with its supply and demand, its efficiency metrics, its cold calculation of utility, has effectively replaced God as the new, infallible divine authority. It dictates worth and morality.
So if you're low value,
the market has judged you. And because the market is presented as objective and always right, challenging your status feels almost like a moral transgression, like questioning God's will. It enforces acceptance of the hierarchy through this guise of cold, hard objectivity.
Wow. Okay, and the final one, deception number 4.
The outcome-based justification. This is the hallmark rhetoric of authoritarian systems everywhere.
The ends justify the means.
Precisely. It's the ultimate logic of abuse, and it's perfectly encapsulated by that satirical dark line. The beings will continue until morale improves.
Oof, yeah.
It illustrates perfectly how authoritarian systems, whether political or ideological, use the ends justify the means argument. They validate brutal, illogical, or outright harmful methods, provided they achieve some desired, often superficial, result.
So applied here, if you feel miserable or lonely using these cold transactional techniques.
The ideology dictates that the problem isn't the system. The problem is you. You aren't applying the brutality or the calculation or the detachment correctly.
The pain isn't a sign the system is bad. It's proof you need to try harder within it.
Exactly. Your suffering is interpreted as evidence. You just need to commit more fully to the flawed system. It's a vicious cycle.
Okay. We've taken it apart. The blueprint, the mechanisms, the smoke and mirrors, the historical echoes. Now let's put it back together. What's the ultimate takeaway? What does freedom from this actually look like for the listener?
Right. The synthesis.
Yeah.
The master deception, when you boil it all down, the absolute core cancer of this entire ideological framework. It's the colonization of the human affective domain.
Colonization of our feelings, basically.
The systematic, insidious claim that love, trust, empathy, vulnerability, emotion, arguably the most complex, valuable, and defining parts of human connection, can be accurately modeled, managed, and governed entirely by the principles of neoclassical economics.
Transaction, exchange, quantification.
Those cold principles apply to the warmest parts of being human. And the immediate crippling consequence of this colonization
is that it turns people into commodities.
Into commodities, yes. And crucially, it transforms your entire emotional life into a stressful, competitive marketplace, a place where you must constantly maintain your high-value stock price.
That self-auditing you mentioned at the start.
It becomes a relentless, exhausting, full-time internal job. And it fundamentally isolates you from genuine connection because you're always calculating, always assessing, always performing for the market.
But there's hope, right? Recognizing the cage is the first step.
Absolutely. Recognizing the true nature of this ideological cage is the first and arguably the most powerful step toward breaking free. The liberatory counter-premise, the way out,
requires rejecting it.
It requires the active, conscious rejection of these internalized market metrics. You have to stop grading yourself and others.
So the rebellion is simple, in a way.
It's radical in its simplicity, yes.
Yeah.
You must recognize, truly internalize, that human value is inherent. It's multidimensional. Your worth is not a six-figure salary. It is not a subjective aesthetic rating. It is not some ratio of provision to beauty.
It's our inner life, our character,
It's the complex, unquantifiable sum of your interior life, your character, your capacity for connection, your impact on others, your journey.
And fulfilling relationships, they aren't built on transactions.
No, they are not built on transactional calculation or leveraging your strategic resources against a perceived opponent. That's the path to loneliness.
They're built on
Mutual respect, shared values, shared goals, true partnership, a system of co-creation and mutual support, not competition.
So the ultimate truth, the thing we want people to really take away from this deep dive,
Is this. The cage isn't just the external structures like dating apps or societal pressures, those play a role. The deepest, strongest bars of the cage are internal.
It's the internalization of the need to constantly audit.
The constant obsessive need to audit your own worth and the worth of others according to these dehumanizing market standards. That's the prison.
So the primary act of rebellion, the first step towards freedom.
The primary act of rebellion you can take today, right now, the moment you finish listening to this, is to simply stop that internal audit.
Stop checking the market value.
Stop checking the market value of yourself. Stop checking it for others. Start living instead in alignment with your true, inherent, unquantifiable human value. That's liberation.
And that's our deep dive for this week.
Remember, the most dangerous illusion is the one you don't know you're in.
But now you know. So here's our question for you.
If you were to start burning your own mental prisons today, which wall would you swing the sledgehammer at first? The need to constantly measure your own market value or the expectation to judge others by theirs?
Let us know in the comments.
Question the narrative.
Deconstruct the dogma.
See the system.
We'll see you next time. Stay skeptical.